What's up, all Power Ice Crew? Today we're looking at differential vents. So I did the axle swap underneath my 91 here, and I've got the right gearing, putting it all back together, put new tie rod ends, ball joints, all this stuff. There'll be videos up on that. But one of the things you got to do whenever you do even just preventive maintenance stuff, you check your oil, your differential fluids and stuff like that. Check to make sure that hose is in good shape right there. See? So what we're doing, my front diff, since I did the swap, I need to hook the vent tube back up. So we'll just take you along, for those of you who've never dealt with that, show you guys what to look for and what to do. Let's get on with it. Now, as you see right here, I've got my hole pre-drilled and tapped, and basically what I drilled and tapped was using a little bit drill bit with the number 8 by 5/8 self-tapping screws. Yes, self-tappers will actually cut on their own, but where I was placing my drill inside here to get in there is kind of a bit of an angle, and it wanted to walk, so a drill bit worked out just fine. Then I come in with the self-tapper behind that. So what that's going to give me is a place to mount my hose up in here with this strap here. And this will keep this kind of shrouded a little bit, keep from junk falling into it and things like that to protect it. I'm going to go ahead and get that in place, and then I'll run my hose down to the differential. I like to start at the top and work my way back. Therefore, I know how much hose I need for one, and it allows me to figure out where I want to place it up in here. I wanted to pull higher in front like this for one, using this right here as a shroud for it, and just because I want to mostly. So, okay, I'll be back with you in just a minute. And what am I using for a vent tube? I'm using fuel hose 5/16. Is fuel hose more expensive than, say, vapor hose or your vacuum hose? Yep, it actually is. But the reason I tend to use this is because, one, it's got the fiber reinforcement on the inside of it. Makes it a lot more tough. And also, the rubber tends to agree with your fluids and stuff like that more. So, spend a little money extra up front to help yourself out on the back end. Now, I've just got it positioned under there right now. I do not have this completely tightened down because I want to be able to manipulate my hose down around my fender and taking it back to the diff. Now, as you can see here, this is where it was mounted at before. This is actually the one that's been on the rig forever, but I pulled one off a rust bucket to do the video with, and now I'm going to cut this one out of the way. But you see how low that was. Anything your tires slinging up, water, mud, whatever splashing, kind of makes it more subject to go inside that. That does have a cap missing. It's supposed to go over top of it. So if it's got the cap on it, it's less likely for it to be contaminated. But nonetheless, try to mount this as high as you want to, especially if you do any kind of water fording or anything like that, or really deep mud, which I'm not a mud fan, so therefore. But nonetheless, mount this as high as possible. And yes, that's my sway bar tied up. It's been like that for years. I need to just take it off because I don't even run it. No trap bars either. But anyway, I'm going to cut that out of the way so I can run my hose on back. What you look at here is the old hose that was on the diff before. You just take your pliers, grab hold of it. You don't want to snatch and pull too hard because that insert inside the differential right there is actually made of plastic. Take your pliers, gently pull on your hose while walking that clamp back and forth. We'll slide them right off, and you don't break your vent hose connection there. Now I'm going to go ahead and route my hose, but I'll show you guys here in a minute where I ran it all through. Get it out of the way of everything. Okay, I got one spot zip tied up. Bring the hose on back. Give me just so I can zoom back on you guys a little bit now. Okay, I've got my hose moving over here. What you want to make sure too is that whenever you put your hose in place, make sure you got enough curl going on here that your axle drop, when you're out wheeling, you get that articulation thing going on. You want to make sure you got enough axle drop that you're not going to be tugging on your hose, but you don't want so much that you're going to be getting in the way of your pinion or anything. And then I'm going to put my drive shaft in since I've got the right gears in it now. So just kind of eyeball how much hose I want. It's okay if it lays back here on the diff a little bit, but you don't want to get back here where the pinion gear is. So we're going to cut it about right there. Yeah, I gotta say, you gotta keep fooling around, you gotta cut your hand. Yeah, probably right. Get a sharper knife would help too. Or a hose cutter. But you get the point. Okay, one more thing. So the old one had the clamp on it. We're going to just use this clamp here, this regular screw-on style. Slide that over that. Slide that over the diff here. And look at where our hose is running. Like I said, I think I'm going to cut that loose, move it back just a little bit more. But overall, it's alright. Make sure your clamps moved up well in place. Slide it up a little bit. There we go. Now once you get your vent tube in place, make sure that your hose clamp is kind of up close to your differential, but leaving about 1/8 of an inch to about 1/8 inch of your hose exposed here, because that'll keep you behind that barb of the fitting that goes inside the differential. So we need to tighten that up, and we'll be pretty much there. Another thing too, by using the fuel hose instead of like a regular vacuum line, you see where it's laying on top of the diff right here? Regular vacuum line, the walls are quite a bit thinner, so after a while it may have to a little bit of rub, abrasion, stuff like that. It may end up knocking a hole in it. But the fuel line is so much thicker, so much stronger, it takes a lot more abuse. But still, this is one of those things whenever you give your rig a check-up, tune-ups, and stuff like that, this is one of the things you want to come underneath and say, yes, it looks good, and we ain't got no holes, yes. So that's one thing you want to keep tabs of, okay? So I told you guys I'm going to show you how to route it. Right there it is. Like I said, make sure that top right there is a little bit loose, because you can wiggle it, make sure it vents like it should. Got my little metal strap right there holding it down. It runs down that way. I'm trying to find the view. Right there. Comes down right there. It is not tied to the brake line. So let's go under so you can see where it is tied. Right here, there's a hole in the frame, goes right here, and move that wire out of the way if I can. That's holding my sway bar up. So it goes in right here, hole there, hole there. I just ran my wire tie through there to hold the hose, the vent tube hose in place there. I'm not a fan of tying it directly to the brake line, simply because if something wants to snatch that tube, you know, you're wheeling and you grab a, I don't know, some kind of heavy limb or something like that, I just didn't want it snatching onto the brake line. So let it come down like that right there. So I can tighten it up a little bit more. There it goes. But again, the other thing about using the fuel line is that it's so much more rugged, so much more thicker. That's going to be like, if it's rubbing against this right here, it's vibrating, that it's going to take it a long time before it'll wear through. Besides, it's not doing anything but venting air anyway, so it's not a big deal. So it's tied up there. Go back up underneath here. It comes right on the top of the diff here, and boom, right there. And you see I've got that good long loop into it right there, so if I got any good axle drop, it's going to give me plenty of room for articulation and not stretch my tube. Now, if you know how much axle drop you got, you can make it short if you want to, totally up to you. But be sure you're not going back and hitting your pinion either. Because it's right there on the, you see, it's probably inch and a half or so from it. And then tighten your clamp up so a limb or something like that doesn't snatch and pull that vent tube off. Because if you get some water or something like that, and you get some water inside the dip, it's gonna eat it up. So there you go. Now let's check our vent tube for the transfer case. Normally it's bolted to the firewall, as you see right here. Goes down the firewall, and you see it moving right there. And as it comes down the firewall, you got it right here beside the transmission, which I've got it all zip tied together here to keep everything from hanging down and hitting the exhaust or getting hung on anything when I'm playing. So then it runs back over top of the transmission. Then we move on back here. Get on this side. Let's see if I can get a position where I can set up and show you guys this. Right here is where it goes to the transfer case. So I've already checked it all. I got no cracks. Everything's in good shape. So I know the light ain't very well in here, but you see the hose right there. And it goes right down to the transfer case. Now, the rear diff. So the vent for your rear diff hooks right where your soft line hooks to for your brake lines. It comes right up out of here, and this is like a typical Dana 35 setup. Goes up right here, circles around, goes above your fuel lines, back that way. Now we gotta go back outside. Or maybe, no, just this way. And so you see it right there beside the gas tank, right there. It goes right up inside there. And now we finally rolled our way back here. Right there it is, and it goes right up inside there. Now again, this is one of those things you can move if you want to, if you're running really deep water, and push it on a power if you need to, if you can get to it. Which I don't play in a whole lot of deep water with this rig right here, so I don't worry too much about it. Get up here a little bit. There we go. Get that glare off of it. There he is. Right there's the end of it. So just be sure to check all that. Be sure you got no cracks. Hose is in good shape. It's not rubbing on anything. And you'll be good to go. Now there are other vehicles besides Jeeps that have these vents on them. It doesn't matter if it's a Chevy Blazer. I don't care if it's a Chevy truck, Ford Broncos, Ford trucks, whatever. It doesn't matter. Front rear diff, transfer case, you probably got a vent. Even a lot of your automatic transmissions have got a vent up at the top. So especially if you got in the water and play or a lot of mud and stuff, you I guarantee you've got some mud caked up in that thing because they're awfully hard to get to sometimes. So be sure to check them. Go. So as I mentioned before, the cap either missing or sometimes you find ones that don't have caps on them. Let me show you something. Pulled that out. Look at this. Camera's gonna pick it up. Anyway, take my word for it. There's a bunch of mud down inside there. Look right there. See all the junk caked up? That's why you want to check this stuff, because that cap was missing off of it. And yes, I've had this rig right here in water a time or two. That's one of those things you just need to keep tabs on to be sure that cap's there. And that's why you want to try to mount them high enough to keep like tree limbs, other debris, stuff like that might hang and pop the cap off. So right there is what you could be getting in your differential. If it's not making it down the tube, if it's not making it down the hose going into your differential, it could at least be clogging it up and not allowing the differential to breathe like it should. And one thing about your front rear diff and your transfer case and all stuff breathing like it should is the fact that equalizing pressure inside of it, it prevents some of the seals from blowing out. So look at that. Yucky. Keep tabs on that. Now we'll snug down with a little band right here to lock it in place. One thing you want to make sure of, no matter what, once you get in place, take your cap, move it around. Does it wiggle around good? Yep. Then we're good to go. But if that thing is locked down, it's pushing down on that tube right there, it's not going to allow it to vent like it should. So be sure that cap moves freely up on top of that. Now just in case somebody asks, hey, I don't go four-wheeling, I don't go mudding, I don't go playing in the creek beds and water fording and stuff like that. I don't do none of that. So do I have to have those vents? Yes, you do. Just because you don't go out and do what Jeeps do or do what any off-road rig does, you still got to have the vents, and here's why. You're going to get in rain eventually, just is the way it is. And that keeps the water from being introduced into the diff. Water's coming off your tires, slinging into the vent holes, stuff like that. You want to make sure that's all good. Another thing, those vents are for equalizing pressure inside the diff, because if you got them plugged off for instance, okay, you look underneath there, you pull them off, you plug it off, and say, I don't need that thing right there. Yeah, you do, because then you're going to build up excess pressure inside your differentials and your transfer cases or wherever they're at. And if it builds up excess pressure, guess what? You start popping seals. Bad thing. And another reason is, especially your differentials, that your gears are spinning. You got your ring gear, your pinion gear, and of course all your spider gears, or if you got a locking diff, whatever you got inside there, that's just spinning very fast. Whenever it's spinning very fast, it's creating a turbulence. Creating a turbulence is like it's creating basically a wind tunnel inside your diff. If you don't have the vent tubes on there running up to at least our proper length, that oil spray inside there could actually creep out that hole right there if you don't have a hose on it. So you want to make sure you got that hose on it and run it up a little bit. Otherwise, you could potentially be blowing your differential fluid out that hole right there. So that's a bad thing. The hole meaning, you know, whenever I showed you guys how to take the clamp off and I wiggled it off the old hose, that little white adapter piece fitting that's sticking out of the diff, that's what I'm talking about. With all the turbulence goes inside the disc, it could be creating enough air pressure, it could be blowing fluid out that hole. Next thing you know, you got no fluid in your diffs and your discs go done. So everyone, if you enjoyed that video, hit me with a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, leave me some cool comments down below, and I really appreciate you hanging out. Peace. Later, y'all.